Morning, my friends. Wiggle here. I hope the day finds you well. Good. So I'm here in the morning. I'm a little stuffy, so I apologize for that. Just still fighting those tree pollen allergies, so just bear with me. And I did want to apologize if these videos are coming off as dry. I actually am kind of a comical guy, and I like to have a good laugh and I'm sarcastic and all that, but these subjects are tough to talk about. They're weighty, and it's not always a positive thing, but it is with a positive intent. I am solutions based, not just complaining about things. I'm just trying to observe things and try to figure out ways to make it better. So, working on the keeping things more engaging, trying to work on the technical parts and make it better. So, just I will improve. I'll get better. So, I do thank you for listening and considering, and I really do seek input and conversation on these ideas because I'm not claiming to have it all figured out. I'm just trying to find the way. I think there's a lot of problems we have to be working on. So we need a lot of solutions. Excuse me. So today I wanted to talk about a couple of subjects. I'm going to try to bring a couple of things together. I am building these playlists a little at a time, part one, part two, as I talk about different aspects, different subjects. Today I'm going to bring a couple of subjects together. I am Intentional community is one of the things I think is a solution, depending on what that means, what that looks like, how you do that. But basically, a cooperative local group of people with the same vision working. And to me, my flavor is to be outside of the system, to not be participating, using money, using their governance, using all of their commerce laws, and try to avoid that, step out of that as much as possible because it's harmful. So, I wanted to talk about government. And I'm going to talk about the way that a lot of intentional communities are governed right now and demonstrate how that, while it seems like a completely different kind of governance, most forms of governance are going to fail for the same reason, similar reasons. So, and it's basically, it always boils down to mob rule. And mob rule is never good. It's the individual rule, the individual liberty that everything else is built on. If you have the mob deciding what, if the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and the needs and the many get to dictate to what the few do, that's always going to look bad. So, in intentional communities, a lot of times they're seeking this everybody's equal, this egalitarian approach where everybody has an equal say, and we're going to try to reach a consensus where everybody is agreeing. And there's a lot of different forms that they use in an intentional community. But the consensus based model, where everybody has an equal say, there's a problem with that. Not to say that everybody doesn't have a right to their basic human rights. Everybody has their individual right to exist, to seek life, to seek happiness. But that being said, if you're going to vote on matters, if you're going to have a say, if everybody's just given a vote without having to earn it, without having any criteria to meet or any responsibilities, or then you have kind of what we have today in a more general sense, and the same in a consensus based arrangement. Everybody has an equal say, and people with different capacities and abilities and experience and knowledge, it pulls everyone down to the lowest common factor, to the lowest person voting, the least capable, the least intelligent, the least experienced, the most selfish, the not good person, the person that is really just out for themselves only, they get the same vote as the most altruistic, benevolent, hardworking, wealthy person that is doing all they can to help everybody. And it's not reasonable. When we had the intent of a republic, you had to earn your right to vote, and you were with your peers. And whatever that might end up looking like, that is a better arrangement because everybody that's voting to decide something in a democratic manner has the right to be there. They're bringing something to the table. They're not just there to vote for a living, to vote for what they need. In intentional communities, people that really are not doing their part get an equal say to get their share. I get to vote for my share no matter what my input is just because I exist. And it's always going to fail. That is always going to fail. That's why government itself is always going to fail. Even in an honest election, even in an honest vote. Which today, if you're believing politics, I am sorry. Because government only creates politicians, and politicians are only, they're out for the highest bidder. They're out for themselves. As an aside, if you believe that the government is going to take care of you, you believe that you can vote and you're going to have a better life as a result of your vote, you're completely duped. It doesn't matter red, blue, left, right, it doesn't matter. You are not going to vote yourself a better life. Politicians, none of them are good. They're not out for you. Not to say that it could never happen. There could be some truly white hat kind of people. They're not in government. They don't have any positions of power. If they're voted in, they're lackeys to the corporations. They're lackeys to bankers. They're lackeys to whoever and whatever. They do what they're told. Their sponsors tell them what to do. And if they weren't like that, they wouldn't be in there. They get run out. They wouldn't have power. If they're voted in, they don't have power. And if they're not voted in, they're there because they're sly, sneaky, underhanded, cutthroat. They know where the bodies are buried. They're not good guys. They don't care about you. They don't have to. It's a form of hopium to think that there's someone in the government, white hat, seeking to save you and make this country a better place. It's not going to happen. It's false hope. Just like hoping the ballot box is going to change your life. False hope. Just like hoping you can get a consensus on something in an intentional community and it's going to be for the better for everybody. Oh, government doesn't work. Politicians are scum. They're liars. They will sell you out. That's how they make a living. They don't make a living helping you. They make a living by doing what they're told by the people that are really paying them. They're not public servants. They are part of theater. It controls you. If voting mattered, nobody would get to do it. And if nobody has to earn the right to vote, voting doesn't matter either. I'm in favor of democracy to a point, the democratic method, not democracy in and of itself. Democracy in and of itself will always fail because the mob supposedly has a say in what happens. What's really going on is it's a selection, not an election, and whoever can keep the most people happy while also causing great division between different groups of people, they're the ones that are going to be in the positions of power and the seats of power because they really just want to keep us divided and fighting amongst ourselves. So we think we need them to sort it all out. And we're not looking at the real problem. The real problem is the supposed leaders. And yeah, the politicians, they're just the politicians. If you understand what a politician is, then they're not the answer and they're really not the problem. The problem is who's behind the politicians telling them what to do. Their job is they're just fall guys. Makes me want to tell a quick story. old farmer was talking to a city guy about politics, and they were talking about whatever candidate A, and he said, "Yeah, that guy's a post turtle." And the city guy looks at the country guy and says, "Post turtle? What's that?" Well, guy bends over, picks up a tortoise, sticks it on a post. He's sitting. So post turtle is like, how did it get up there? And it has no place being there. It has it, and I'm really blowing this joke, but they're post turtles. All politicians are post turtles. Just picture a tortoise up on a post, can't get down, don't know how it get up, doesn't know how it got up there, and it's worthless once it's up there. It's like, how did that happen? Who put that up there? It's all politicians. Sorry, left, right, doesn't matter. It's all the wings of the same bird, and it's a buzzard. If your vote mattered, they wouldn't let you do it, and they count it anyway. So it doesn't matter who votes. It doesn't matter what the vote is. It matters who counts the votes. And if you think from the past major election, you think that was counted right, and now you're hoping anything beyond that is ever going to be counted properly, if it was a count, if it was an honest count, which it hasn't been, it's not going to be. You're not going to vote for a better way of life. Doesn't matter if it's an intentional community or a republic. Would work, perhaps, but it didn't. It failed. A democracy is never going to work. So all this to say, how do we govern ourselves? Well, the ultimate way to govern yourself is to not rely on the government. Or you have a very, very limited government, because there are things that we need the government to do. We do need an actual police force. We do need an actual military force. We do actually need a judicial process that is fair. Uh, you know, let's have a justice system for real, not this crony insiders club bunch of parasites that what's right, what's moral has nothing to do with what's legal. That's not justice. So you need a very limited form of government to facilitate things that people can't do. You need to have a way to escalate certain matters up that cannot be dealt with on a very local level. And you need somebody to take care of the bad guys when they come in. You need somebody to deal with the violent and the forceful and the coercive. But as it is, the biggest coercive force that we face in this country is the police, and in the world is the military. It's an aggressive, coercive force, and it's not based on justice. It's not for our good. The laws are not for our good. The laws are not just. It's not fair, and the enforcers, by and large, it's kind of like politics. The good guys got run out, and you got the bad guys. You got sociopaths, psychopaths running things and working there. Can't do anything else, so they join the biggest gang on and go, SWAT send SWAT to the Amish for selling raw milk. Let's go point our weapons at people, unarmed civilians that are passive, or shoot them even. It's like that is so not what we need out of government. What we need is a very limited police that is definitely accountable to the people, directly accountable to on a local level to the people, and that's how they deal. We don't need this federal overarching thing. That should never have happened. We should have remained independent states that had strong local governments. But that's an aside. Oh, I lose my thought here. So, and then the military is in a defensive capacity only, not in this. We're policing 300 countries around the world and bringing democracy and peace. No, we're imperialist invaders. We're the redcoats over there shooting civilians and taking out governments and building up and doing what the corporations want, robbing raw materials and whatever else they want, wealth of whatever kind. We're there. It's the bankers' wars. It's not democracy. And why would we spread democracy anyway? Democracy is a process, not an entity. Any entity that calls itself democracy is broken. So, in the context of intentional communities, in the context of most forms of government, when you have the politicians in the government, they do not produce anything. They are just a control mechanism. The government cannot and does not produce anything of value. All the government does is, and I'll say this in the churches as well, leadership, they live off of the flock that they serve. They're they're not bringing anything of value. They just, their job is to organize. And I don't want to get into the whole church thing, but um, you don't want politicians and you don't want leaders deciding what everybody else wants. The problem is the nature of mankind. The general tendency is we want a king. We want a king. You can look in scripture for this as well. Why do we want a king? Because the king is going to make the decisions and give us what we need. And we can have a life of ease, comfort, convenience, luxury, and the government will give us what we need. Never can work. The government always takes, and the people in the government are going to take their share. The leaders are always going to get their share that they're not earning. Their job is politics. So just avoid politicians if you want to see a better world, because they're all parasites. If someone is forced into being a leader because nobody else is going to do it and they have the capacity and they're good leaders and they care, that's rare. That's the kind of leaders you need. And those are the kind of leaders you would need in just the smallest circles, in the smallest clan style arrangement. You need good men running the household and everything surrounding it, the people helping and participating in that, and they make the decisions. And that's not going to be a democracy. And yeah, you can have problems if the guy in charge is not a good guy, if he's not a just, moral, upright guy, and he's going to use force and violence, you're going to always have problems with that. This is why you see in scripture good kings, bad kings. So we certainly don't need giant regional or national level kings. It's never going to be for our good. You just need local leaders. And actually, the way our government was intended was, if you look in Deuteronomy, look at the Old Testament, the way that you had 10 guys, a minion, and then you would have a leader of that 10. Then you'd have 10 minions, 100 guys, 10 groups of 10, and you have one guy representing him. So a captain of 100. And then you'd have 10 hundreds, and then you'd have a captain of 1,000. And it was always represented by 1% or 10% of whatever said group. And at some point, before there was kings, they had judges. They had people that had demonstrated wisdom and knowledge and the ability to deal with people, and they were in places, and they were like a council. And that's what we need. We need a council of elders that can make binding decisions, but it's not concerning the small everyday details of life. It is the bigger things that you have to escalate. You have to take the biggest problems to the top and they get solved. Kind of what the Supreme Court's supposed to be, but it's not. But interestingly, our country was founded on those principles, but we've long since lost that. Right now, we need to just get back to the 1 and the 10, the minion. We don't even have minions. Do you have 10 peers of 10, let's just say whoever's the head of a household, and they're going to represent their circle, and you get 10 of those guys, or okay, fine, women, 10 of those leaders of whatever household, groups of 10 come together, and among them they are peers, and they decide one guy, one girl, one person to represent. That's the basic form of government. And if you're not with 10 peers, 10 households that are, we don't really have anything that's going to function well. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with self-rule, where we decide for ourselves and we're allowed to do what we want as long as we are not using force, not hurting each other. The only real parameters is use no force, do no harm, and you're good. Everything is voluntary. Now, within a household, that may not play out quite the same because the leader has to lead. He has to be capable and he has to make the decisions that's best for everyone. And that is a tough thing to swallow, but that is what works. So the first form of government should be the head of the household. And other than that, it's anarchy, self rule, anarchos. We rule ourselves, self rule. And when you have that, and all government stems from a voluntary representational, and you keep that small and focused and under the control of the people to make sure that we just don't have what we have today. So the problem with intentional community, and it's going to end up being meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's going to be the same old mob rule democracy that's never going to work. It's always going to fail. It's always going to drag everything down. If you don't have to earn the right to vote, the vote is not important. The vote needs to be made by people that have proven worthy of having the vote. You have to earn the right to vote. And yeah, that's tough to handle too. So yeah, but that's what'll work. Everybody and their dog and dead people voting from the grave and people coming and voting that have never even lived in this country, and that would destroy the vote. If it was a real vote, it would already be a problem, but it's even bigger than that. The vote is irrelevant. All you're doing when you vote in today's ballot box, all you're going to do is give permission to whoever they select. It's like, that's my boss. That's what they're going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it. And those guys are never going to do anything but redistribute wealth, or use coercion or fear to make you do what they need you to do. The government is based on fear and taking. And really, do we need that? So again, I think the intentional community governance is going to have to look more like the circle in a smaller. It's like I hate to say it, it's going to cause a lot of a patriarchal type arrangement at the basic level. Is the first circle where you have people centered around and working together, what you would call an intentional community, a commune. You need a leader of that, because leaders always emerge and they leave a lot because they can't do what needs to be done. Governance is a very difficult thing. Leadership is a very difficult thing. And if you have a consensus model that's working, show me, talk to me about it, demonstrate it. Is there wealth? Is there liveliness? Is there new growth? Is there fruit? Are you a thriving community, or is consensus just killing everything in committee and you're getting nothing done and people are frustrated, and the real people that could do they just leave because they don't need that. They don't need to be drugged down by all the people that just want to take. I don't think consensus works. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think the democracy as we have it works either. So we're left needing to rule ourselves and to be stepping back from government, ruling ourselves and just being left in peace. And hopefully you have good leaders. But right now, nobody has good leaders. It's like you're better to take your shot with a guy or a person that's there doing the best they can, that really do care. They may not be qualified. They may be making bad decisions, but the intent behind it is to do good and to learn to do good. And to leadership can be taught, and it's trial and error. It's the intent behind it. There is no good intention behind the government that we have now. And I think in intentional communities, largely there are people that care, but at some point it gets muddled and it becomes, if you're familiar with Animal Farm, it's like they become the pigs. The people, the pigs become the people. It's at the top. The police and military are the dogs, and the pigs are the people sitting at the table living off everybody else's work, basically. it's always going to be the case. There's going to be different classes of people. I don't think there's ever an egalitarian thing. It's just an illusion. So we need to find a better way to arrange things. So, what is my solution? Uh, Here in my not really intentional community, but here in my household, I'm going to decide what happens and I'm going to try to be a good leader. I'm also going to try to take input. I'm going to try to be a good leader. I'm trying to be a good king in this small circle. Now, I have a neighbor and they're free to do whatever they want. Let's say I have 10 homesteads all around me, and those guys all are doing their thing, and we're all talking, we're all peers because we all have our own. One guy might have 100 acres, one guy might have one, but he's on his own and he's taking care of himself, and he is a net gain to the community. He's not just taking the community of 10. Everybody is doing more than what they need to survive, and they have excess. And we're exchanging it with each other. And those 10 people, those 10 leaders, are accountable to each other, because that doesn't mean everybody and all the other people don't really have a say in that council. Those 10 guys come together and they're going to elect one guy, and he's going to be the leader. And there starts the politics right there. Politics begin. But, but hopefully they get the best guy for the job and they keep him in line, and not to force what you need out of it, but to do what is right, to focus on the truth and justice and a benevolence towards the whole community. And that governance of 10 guys, that minion, 10 people, that would be a superior form of government to anything we have now. And it's definitely superior to just giving everybody a vote and everybody that exists. Yeah, you're going to say, no, these guys that have been chosen from their circle to lead, and hopefully it looks like fathers passing it on to sons, ideally. And I know, again, this whole gender thing, but men make better leaders. Men are made for um, provision and protection, and women are made for nourishing, growing. um, I don't want to say coddling, but they're motherly. They're and then they're communicating and supporting life and doing all. It's not a bad thing. That's kind of the natural design of things. So yes, ideally it would be father to son, grandfather to father to son, and hopefully there's a number of sons. Hopefully there's fertility and lots of kids, which is a blessing, not a curse. And when you have many sons, you can kind of choose the next one and kind of train him up to be that. And he has a lifetime of being taught by a good leader to pass on a good leader to continue. When you don't have sons, you have a problem. The line is broken. That's another thing. But if you have men being taught to be men and being raised up and in the sphere and the orbit influence of good men, they're going to raise to be good men, and they're going to get the experience to lead. That's the kind of education that we should be having for leaders. But right now, men are just largely adolescents. They're not really filling that role. Of course, there's good, strong men doing what they need to do, but I think it's more rare than it is common. So this is going to be a clan-based local council. I think is the ultimate goal. And I guess I've said what I had to say on this. I'll continue. I need to gather my thoughts and fill in the holes as usual. Just woke up in the morning and wanted to lay this out. Don't you guys find that the thoughts are best in the morning? The early morning work. This is a truism to me. The morning work is the most productive, because you're most present. You're fresh, and you have more enthusiasm first thing in the morning. Like, everything before lunch is the most important part of the day. I found that when I was contracting, construction, up until lunch, that's 2/3 of your workday. After lunch, you come back and you're kind of just poking around. You can kind of button things up and clean up, but after lunch, the afternoons, it's just your productivity drops. So I like coming in the morning and doing videos. Anyway, that's an aside. It's just you got to get up early and you got to hit the work. I think to get it done. So that's just a bit of opinion. So anyway, thank you for being here still and listening to what I had to say. I really would like to hear what you think. I would like the conversation. And just remember to be the light walking in dark places. This is Wiggle Out.